All right, check the mic. We're live. Instant reaction time for Week 16. Sam, we're going to be talking about all the games from today. Of course, tomorrow, game by game, including Thursday night, the two Saturday games. But for now, let's talk what we just saw here today, Sam. Let's start with the Commanders in that wild game against the Eagles. We have Jalen Hurts getting hurt in the first half for the Eagles. Kenny Pickett has to come in pretty early for the Eagles. They put up 33 points. They forced 5 turnovers, but it's the Washington Commanders who never said die. Jaden Daniels leading the comeback with 5 passing touchdowns and an almost walk-off win there for Washington. Really impressive 36-33 win over the Eagles.
Yeah, crazy game because Washington had 5 turnovers in the game against effectively the number 1 defense in the NFL. And the drive before the drive where he executed the comeback, Jaden Daniels was completely off, threw an interception, threw everything was off in that drive. Like it looked like he'd blown the chance to execute the comeback and then got another shot at it and was able to do it the second time around. Yeah, it was really impressive from Washington's point of view. They were able to hang into a game where they kept giving the Eagles the ball. But you have to at least acknowledge, it was Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett rather than Jalen Hurts. Hurts is out there, ruled out of the game with a concussion. Obviously, that makes a pretty significant difference.
Yeah, it made a big difference. Also, Devontae Smith dropping a key third down that probably would have sealed it right there for the Eagles. Another key play. Commanders end up with like 13 possessions. There are games we talk about, teams limiting possessions, 8 or 9 possessions in a game. So the Commanders had all those turnovers, but kept fighting back. There were a couple ridiculous drives there from Jaden Daniels too. Just a 4th and 11 scramble to keep them alive. He had a 96-yard drive where he hit 2 big-time throw, just dropping a bucket deep balls that Daniels is known for, plus a first down scramble on 4th down on that drive. There was just a whole bunch of, big-time plays really from Jaden Daniels in this game. So Commanders moved to 10-5, man. And if anything, look, I know it's Pickett, not Hurts, and whatever. They showed they could compete against an Eagles team that had a defense that's been cooking for the last 12 or 13 weeks here.
Yeah, that's the bigger part of it is that they put up a ton of points against that number 1 defense in the NFL or one of the best defense in the NFL, depending on how you want to measure it. That's huge. Remember last time the game, they held pretty tight against the Eagles, and then the Eagles just lent on them late in the game and wore them down. But they weren't able to really keep pace in that game. Like their offense wasn't able to do what they did to them in this game. So yeah, a different Washington performance and result this time around.
I want to stay in the NFC. 4:00 game here. The Minnesota Vikings get the win 27-24 over the Seahawks. Vikings move to 13-2. Seahawks, man, they had a couple key plays to get back in this, had the 4th quarter lead, but Sam Darnold comes through again, finding Justin Jefferson for the game-winning touchdown. Pretty fun back-and-forth game here. And look, the Seahawks are, I think, a playoff caliber team. They might end up on the outside looking in when it's all said and done, but it was a big game for them to show, hey, we could at least compete, with playoff teams, and for Minnesota keeping pace with the 13 wins, to tie Detroit and Philadelphia for the best record in the NFC.
Yeah, and the number 1 seed is in Minnesota's hands, effectively, because they play Detroit, right? So if they win that game, if they beat Green Bay, they are the 1 seed in the NFC. It was interesting because their 2 teams are very similar in that I think they're both playoff caliber teams. Certainly the Vikings, obviously, Seattle, I think you're right, are as well. And the Achilles heel for both of them, or the weakness, is their offensive lines, right? And both offensive lines, I think, were struggling to contain the pass rush and the blitz looks and the stunts and all the creativity that those 2 different defenses were bringing to the table. Darnold was getting buried late in the game. The Seahawks pass rush was getting to him. Only the last time they got to him with a face mask as well, and that was able to change that drive. Was it the very next play? He goes nuts and just heaves it deep to Jefferson. That's the touchdown. So the Vikings benefit from a face mask call this time around. Not a fake one, an actual real one. They just saw it this time.
Yeah, they did call it this time. And man, I keep saying wow with Sam Darnold. Not every play. This had heavyweight fight type of battle here. I think back and forth, the number of plays Minnesota's defense made against Geno Smith, and Geno Smith coming back with big time throws to DK Metcalf and JSN, but Darnold stepping through the pocket to hit that window to Jefferson for the game winner. Just so impressed again with what Darnold does in the down the stretch in the fourth quarter for the Vikings. Saw the stat at the end, Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings with 31 one-score wins since he took over as head coach, since 2021. That's over 10 a year, Sam. What the heck's going on? That's unbelievable. Oh, no, wait.
Yeah.
They added a year to it. It's almost 10 a year, but that's the Vikings generally, one-score wins.
And we were I was speculating yesterday, like, because Mahomes is now, they've broken the record, right, for the longest consecutive one-score wins in NFL history or something. The last team that had that record was the Patriots back in the middle of their dynasty. So maybe there is like a legitimate skill to that, whether it's a coaching skill or a quarterback skill or a combination of both. And it is actually a repeatable way, because every time the Vikings are in these crazy close one-score games, you never feel good about it. Like, it's like, why can't they just go away and win by, 15, and everyone would feel better about themselves? But O'Connell certainly is the common denominator here and does seem to have this ability to keep producing these one-score wins. Okay, there's been a loss or two in there, but they had, what was it, 11 or something in one season. And we're like, well, that's going to regress next year. And it did, but not like all the way back. And then they were able to back it up again. Like, it is something that they seem to be able to consistently achieve.
All right, so the other NFC team to keep pace, of course, Detroit Lions, they get the win over the Bears, 34-17. So the Lions are also 13-2. And as we had said, the fast starts of the Lions, the slow starts of the Bears, is this going to happen again? Well, it happened again. Lions got up early. It was too much for the Bears to overcome. And just another week with the Lions where there's going to be a fun trick play. You're not sure exactly which playmaker is going to kill you. It's Jamison Williams, who had 143 yards, a bomb for a touchdown. It's Sam Laporta. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. They all get involved. And Jahmyr Gibbs had to actually, pick up the full workload here with David Montgomery out. And he does a pretty nice job with 23 carries for 109 yards.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of the way this game should have gone, right? Like, the Lions got out early again. There was a brief period where Chicago threatened to bring it back and get it close again the way they did the last time they played, but the Lions kind of killed that this time. They were able to just stop the comeback, and Chicago wasn't able to really execute it. They kept hanging around. They brought it close a bit late, but they were never able to really bring it back the same way they were last time. And again, they just couldn't stop Detroit's offense, which kept making plays every time they needed them to.
All right, let's talk a little AFC playoff picture here. The teams at the very bottom needing some help, hoping to get in. Indianapolis Colts stayed alive, so they moved to 7-8 with their 38-30 win over the Titans. This was one of those games when I got the 7 box going. They're up, 38-7 at one point. Titans score the last 23 points to make it a bit of a game, get within a score. Wild game back and forth with Mason Rudolph again, doing his best Will Levis impression.
Yeah, I mean, they all did, right? All the in the hunt teams that are basically dead all won just to keep themselves alive, right? Miami,
yes.
Miami, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis all got a win to get themselves to 7, which is still 2 games back, so they still need to win out and have, the Chargers or the Broncos lose out at the same time. So, yeah, they kept themselves alive. This was weird. I mean, the Colts were dominating the game, and somehow a comeback happened and almost got all the way back. It was bizarre.
Yeah, the stat lines are hilarious, man. The Colts finished with 335 yards on the ground, 218 from Jonathan Taylor, who was going full, like, I'm going track style through the end zone this week. We're not dropping the ball. So he made
Good
sure.
for him.
Yeah, good adjustment for him, really making sure we're going to, turn this into a touchdown this time. Anthony Richardson only threw 11 times for the Colts because of all the running ability that the Colts showed there. And then Mason Rudolph with the 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, had some downfield throws to Calvin Ridley. So, look, Titans, they're not soft. They battled. They hung tough. So you mentioned the other game. Miami, we just saw them beat the San Francisco 49ers. They stayed alive, 29-17. Niners officially done this season. Showed flashes at times of Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, but just not enough for them. And Miami maybe showed that they could beat a good team, but, San Francisco's got they have a losing record.
No, they can't be now. This is what we said. Yeah. If they win this game, it reinforces the stereotype because San Francisco can't get to a winning record this season. And
Yes.
coming into the game, San Francisco knew they were eliminated. Like they knew they were dead before they even started playing this game based off the 1 p.m.s. So it's the perfect narrative game for Miami. It meant that they could win and not be at risk of actually beating a good team because the 49ers are officially now a bad team. They're not going to make the playoffs and they'll have a losing record. So Miami can safely beat them and not affect any narrative whatsoever.
And just to touch on it quickly, Bengals 24-6 over the Browns. Not going to talk about it any more than that. Joe Burrow made some more spectacular plays, and Bengals now 7-8. And as you mentioned earlier, technically still alive, needing help from the Dolphins, the Colts, the Broncos, and or the Chargers to keep going.
I saw at one point during the game, ESPN's like live playoff odds had them up at 14%, where they had 11 coming into the game or something.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Based off like 2 hours worth of the 1 p.m.s, they were up another 3%. They probably ticked up another percent based off the full-time results, but it's not likely, but it's still possible.
All right, Carolina Panthers overtime win over the Arizona Cardinals. This Panthers were in field goal range to win it in overtime, but Chuba Hubbard decides to just take it to the end zone to get the 6-point win instead of a 3-point win. Don't leave it to the field goal. Another pretty fun game from Bryce Young, and I think an important one. We've talked so much about his development, his career, coming off of his worst game since his return last week, and he bounces back with another game where I can't wait to get to the film because I think we're going to say again, 17 of 26 for 158 and 2 touchdowns. Pretty good stat line. It's fine, but to me, another impressive outing from Bryce Young, although he could have sealed it a little bit earlier with the 3rd and 3 pass that he missed. But overall, pretty nice game from him.
He did miss one, yeah. This was really, really good from him, though. Like, he was doing everything well in this game. I mean, he trucked somebody, like anybody, it doesn't matter. He trucked a guy in the open field at 5'10", 180 pounds. That guy immediately needs to go and retire based off the back of that. But he trucks a guy. There was a play later where he picked up a first down, made a really nice pass whilst being absolutely deleted on the play by an unblocked blitzer up the middle. Guy absolutely annihilates Bryce Young. He just pops back up, makes the play. The very next play was the beautiful touchdown pass on the fade into the end zone. Perfect ball placement. I mean, he was absolutely on one in this game, which it's huge because last week, I mean, he'd been playing well since he came back, basically. And then last week was a disaster. He played badly. He turned the ball over a bunch. He just got beat up by a better defense. This was to show that he could come back. Like, he bounced back not just a little bit, bounced all the way back and showed last week did not have anything like the kind of effect that, his previous beatings had on him.
Like I said, we'll have the full breakdown tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing that film and a couple of those big time throws that he made in clutch situations as well. Other one we got to touch on from the 1 o'clock window: Atlanta 34-7 over the Giants. Michael Penix Jr.'s debut, 2 defensive touchdowns early on. So this wasn't all offense here from the Falcons. I thought Penix, from what I saw on first watch, looked pretty good. I thought he was aggressive really early on. It was like our friend Zach, like Penix. They said, look, you're in here for a reason. Chuck it down the field. Get the ball to Drake London. Get the ball down the field to Darnell Mooney. And not all, 40-yard bombs or anything, but that intermediate level, they were attacking that early on.
Yeah, I thought he looked very good, actually. Obviously, anyone that saw his interception, very much not on him. Kyle Pitts sort of turned a catch into instead launching the ball towards a defender who picked it off. And that was down in the tight red zone as well. That could have been a touchdown to add to his stats. Instead, it ends up being an interception. I thought he played well. I thought he read the game pretty well. Like, you could see him. It wasn't just a lot of his preseason was kind of one read, fire the ball. This was a lot more progression stuff. And then he opens up areas of the field. Like, it's a different offense with him in there simply because he can make throws that Kirk Cousins can't make. Now, and that's clearly important because, Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, Kirk Cousins, collectively, they had to adapt the offense to, in accordance with what Cousins could do now and what he can't do. That all disappears now. You're not working with the same restrictions. Michael Penix can do whatever you want him to do. He can fire a 15-yard out from the far hash like it's nothing. Kirk Cousins probably can't even make that throw anymore. Certainly needs optimum platform to do it. Michael Penix can move. Like, he's not going to be Jaden Daniels as a scrambling threat, but he's athletic in the pocket. He can move around away from pressure and, reset his spot. So the whole offense is now a much more true representation of what Zach Robinson wants it to be, not whatever adaptation they've collectively come to make Kirk Cousins functional.
And after weeks of me, I don't want to say defending the Giants, but like the one kind of hope I think I had for the Giants was they're a little bit more competitive and more close losses this year for a team that I didn't think was very good. They've just been getting wrecked week after week right now. I know this is since they benched Daniel Jones. He's probably going to keep them in more games than Drew Lock or Tommy Cutlets. But hey, they're not looking good, and they have the number 1 overall pick. So there's a lot of first overall pick implications today. So there's the Giants losing. They are sitting atop the number 1 overall pick sweepstakes. They're 2-13. No one else has 2 losses anymore or 2 wins anymore because the Raiders beat the Jags. And so the Raiders moved. They have 3 wins now. And what happened in the standings for the number 1 overall pick, the Giants still at 1. The Jags move up to number 2. Raiders move from 2 to 5. Both teams are 3-12. But the Jaguars have the all-important tie-breaking loss with the Raiders because the Raiders won today, if you're keeping track at home.
The Raiders, the team that has missed out on quarterbacks at the top of the draft for the last couple of years, whilst being reasonably well-positioned, but not perfectly well-positioned at the very, very top, may have just cost themselves another quarterback prospect, absent having to make a trade to go get the guy. Because like you said, they just dropped 4 draft spots in a 2 quarterback draft, potentially. So if we assume one of them is going number 1 overall, the next one is probably going before the Raiders pick, even if it's not Jacksonville. The Raiders, that was costly. I mean, it sounds crazy, but like this is the type of game that the Eagles pulled starters from to make sure this didn't happen, so that they could keep a higher draft pick. The Raiders won this game that means nothing for them now, and that makes it much more difficult to get the quarterback that they want.
It's going to be fun to discuss this offseason. Just to touch on it briefly here. Right now, the Titans are at 3. We know they need a quarterback as well. So the Jags, I think the Jags' decision, or if New England ever jumped up ahead of some of these QB-needy teams, their decision is going to be, do I take a Travis Hunter? Do I take a very good tackle? Or do I trade down? The Jags in particular could screw the Titans out of a quarterback pick here if they trade with the Raiders. This game may have cost the Raiders draft capital, essentially. Is the big thing. So they could still get their quarterback, but with extra draft capital to have to go get
right.
Him.
They're going to have to trade for the pick that should have been rightfully theirs if they just choked this game away.
And look, I think it's a fun storyline. I don't think the players are literally out there tanking or anything. Like, we know that's not the case. But it was a funny turn of events when the Raiders missed a field goal and then blew a coverage 2 plays later to give the Jags the lead. And it was almost like, all right, now they're going to get back to that number 2 pick. I know it wasn't on purpose. They fought back, and Aiden O'Connell with some big plays in the comeback there for the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like there was a period of time where it felt like both teams were trying to throw the game away. And I think, as you said, not because they were, just because they're bad.
It's just because they're bad. It might look like they're taken, but it's just how they play. All right, last game to touch on.
At this game.
Buffalo Bills only 24-21 with the win over the Patriots. Patriots came out smoking. Dominated the first, 18 minutes of the game, first quarter plus. They were up 14-0. Drake May dropping an absolute dime into Keyshawn Butte's arms for a touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson with a great touchdown run, but then the Patriots started turning it over. Stevenson with a fumble. Drake May, lateral off Stevenson that ends up as a touchdown for the Bills. And the Bills keep their hopes alive for the number 1 overall seed with the win today.
Yeah, ridiculous game. It was a 14.5-point line or something, and the Patriots take a 14-point lead in the game. And even like just after that first touchdown, it's like, oh, this is going to be one of these games, right, where there's no good reason for it to be close. And so it will be. And yeah, the Patriots were the better team for a big chunk of that game. Buffalo eventually started to, overtake them, put up some points of their own, actually score, not make some mistakes. But then the Patriots kind of came back into it again, almost pulled a comeback. Ran out of time, ran out of possessions, but it made it a lot closer than this game had any reason to be on paper.
Yeah, they hung tough. They're playing hard. I think it's always fun to see what the rookie quarterbacks are doing. We talked about Jaden Daniels and his the star power that he brought in that game. We didn't mention Caleb Williams, but I thought there was a lot of positives in his game with the Lions. And Drake May did it again as a massive underdog in a game that they shouldn't be in. Thought Drake May made some big plays again for New England, and for the 15th straight week, it's like, oh, I wonder what he'll look like with some better playmakers once the Patriots get some offensive linemen and some pass catchers there.
And, really good, except for the one really bad mistake that he made. It's a standard, weekly practice.
There's one, yeah.
Make spectacular plays. There's one awful play in there. And there's the usual caveat of everybody he's throwing to is terrible and everybody pass blocking for him is terrible. So what can you really expect?
Did Josh Allen hurt his MVP odds? I don't know. He locked it up last week. So I think he's just Dan O sent his vote in already, right? So it doesn't matter.
This is interesting, right? Because Lamar Jackson played arguably like an MVP, but it doesn't count because Derrick Henry did as well in the same game, right? So Josh Allen probably did his MVP case some harm in this game. Saquon, after the first quarter, was like MVP, but then cooled off in the second half, and they didn't win the game. So everybody took a step back, except Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, the one guy that's not going to win the MVP, had the MVP game today.
It's funny because Burrow's going to receive 0 votes unless the unthinkable happens, which is the Bengals win out, Dolphins lose, Colts lose, Broncos lose. If all of that happens, somebody's going to say, well, Burrow got them to the 7 seed. Of course, Joe Burrow deserves MVP votes. And man, he is so good. Again, some incredible plays again today.
You say 0 votes. Remember, I have a vote, and I could be convinced that Joe Burrow is the deserved MVP. I'm not there yet, but if you work on me for a while, I could come around to that argument.
I've gotten a sneak peek at PFF's WAR number, and he's at a high level, especially compared to others he's competing with. We'll just say that. So, anyway, fun week as always. Tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, 7 a.m. We're going to be live. Don't press the button yet, Sam. We got some recap stuff to do, okay? Don't press the button yet. Give me the look when you want me to. But we appreciate everybody joining us. Is tomorrow our Christmas episode, Sam?
Yeah, you got to be in full costume, whatever you're wearing.
Whatever I'm wearing.
It's Elf. You can't have multiple Christmas get-ups.
I don't have much beyond Elf, and that's what I bring to the table. My hat's going to hit the ceiling over here. That's going to be awkward.
It's a shame.
So full Christmas episode tomorrow morning, and we'll be going game by game, full slate, and that's about it. 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, YouTube channel. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe.